Welcome to the May 10th, 2022 Johnson City Regional Planning Commission meeting. If you're here to speak at one of the public hearing items, please wait for me to open the floor. And then once the public hearing has been opened, please come forward to the microphone at the podium, state your name and address clearly into the microphone, and then proceed to give your comments. And please limit them to 3 minutes and keep on topic. And as also, please address the commission, not the audience. So now I'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Commissioner Murphy, would you lead us in an invocation and pledge of allegiance, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. Father, we thank you today for giving us an opportunity to conduct your business and your affairs. Thank you for all those who are here today. I pray that matters that are discussed and the way we handle your business, that you are pleased with it. And you get all the glory and honor. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance.
You're good.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have before us an agenda. Any questions about the agenda or any changes to the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or discussions about either of those 2 items?
Minutes of the previous meeting.
I'm sorry, I overlooked approving the minutes. I always do that, don't I, Nicole? The minutes have been submitted from last month's meeting on April 12th. Any changes or adjustments to the minutes as they've been presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes as they're presented? Say
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, now to the agenda. We've got 2 items on the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions about either of those 2 items?
The consent agenda number 3, Mitchell properties, that removed, Nicole?
Number 3?
Yes, that was updated, so I apologize if your copies weren't updated.
I'm looking at the old copy.
Okay.
Not your fault, my fault.
Okay.
Hearing no other questions, I want to pull item number 1 on the consent agenda, the Chestnut Cove subdivision, for discussion. Will, I believe that's your item.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chairman Dagenhart, Vice Chairman Whitfield, and Commissioners. This is final plat approval for Chestnut Cove Phase 2B. I think at this point, this has been going on for several years. I'm sure you're well aware of where this is located at, in the proximity of Boone's Creek Elementary School, the new one, and for this area over here. All right, this is set. We're looking at this phase tonight. Phase 2A was passed last month, was approved last month, so we're looking at Phase 2B. It's 17 lot, single-family subdivision. There's a dedication of 0.17 miles of Gransley Court to be dedicated to the city and built to the lane cross-section standard as defined in the subdivision regulations. All of the lots, all 17 lots meet all the regulations of the zoning code and the subdivision regulations. These are the setbacks and the minimum lot size for the R2B, which is the low density, single-family residential with zoning. Water and sewer available to the property. All right, this is the lane cross-section. You've seen that on preliminary as well. The reason that we needed to pull this off the consent agenda tonight is because we would recommend approval of the final plat contingent upon the binder being installed, which there were some scheduling conflicts. This binder is supposed to be installed tomorrow. And with that, the bond is yet to be posted. Now, the bond, we're recommending approval of the final plat, provided that the binder is installed and that the bond for $101,000 is posted to cover incomplete work. And that's the reason, because of the contingency, that's why we asked, why it needed to be pulled.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
So it's being pulled from the agenda?
From the consent?
No,
From the consent
just from the
agenda.
consent
Okay.
agenda, yeah. No, we're recommending approval with that. and acceptance of the $101,000 bond.
Mr. Ryder, quick question for me. I can see the lane cross street section designated sidewalk. I'm just having trouble seeing on the final plat.
The sidewalk's not required to be, it was on the construction plans, but not required to be on the final plat, but not to be depicted on the final plat.
But is it-
Not a requirement of the final plat, but the sidewalk is installed.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for staff? I'll open a public hearing. Is anyone here to speak to the question? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions or any additional discussion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Please do.
Motion to approve final plat Chestnut Cove subdivision phase 2B.
With the binder, assuming the binder is,
Contingent on.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Grant approval on the final plat contingent upon surfacing street with binder asphalt, posting of the bond.
okay, we've got a motion on the floor.
Second.
Second. Any discussion about the motion? Any clarification?
Do we need to include the dollar amount on the motion?
You can make a separate motion to accept the $101,000 bond.
You want to amend your
Can I
motion?
can I amend it to have one motion?
Yes, sir.
Great. So, motion to approve the final plat for Chestnut Cove Phase 2B under the contingency that upon surfacing of the street with the binder asphalt, posting of $101,000.
And seconder agree? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockmiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner Oshenbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Whitfield?
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes.
Motion is approved with conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Will. We've got a question for old business regarding University Parkway. Peyton, is this yours?
I think you guys have to approve the consent agenda first before we can move on to old business.
Oh, I thought we approved it.
No, we'll have to make a motion and vote.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one more item on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion that we leave it on the consent agenda and proceed?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda item being left on consent, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now, Peyton, is this up, are you up next?
Yes, now it's me. Good evening, Commissioners. In front of you, once again, I have rezoning 1081 at the corner of South Roan and University Parkway, going from R1 to R4 and PB. So I'm going to start out with a history. This was the initial proposal that you all heard. And again, this included issues with ingress and egress. And so after that, we got to this proposal, where there was a full access point at the top of a hill that solved a big sight distance issue. However, there was still some concern over the existing East Highland. So now stepping foot into our proposal today, the rezoning itself is not changing. That has remained the same. So it is still going from R1 to R4 on this piece right here, and R1 to PB to extend this existing piece right here. And again, it's a currently split zone parcel, and as the subdivision goes through, the zoning will align with the new parcel lines. Now here is the new concept plan. So this is where the change is occurring, and this is why it actually got kicked back to you guys. This section of East Highland right here is proposed to be closed. So no longer will there be an access point of East Highland. And in fact, East Highland will actually come through and be at this full access point. Now, this plan, I do want to note, is a slightly different than the plan that you guys got in your packet, just because we had to deal with some right-of-way going back to this property. So again, there's still townhomes on these 2 lots right here, but the main difference is that the right-of-way closure from the old East Highland joins this lot. They don't have to dedicate additional right-of-way right here because there's no need, they're not expanding it. And East Highland is going to actually come across this property right here. The rest of this is unchanged. And so this is a little bit of an easier to look at graphic for you guys. So again, this green right here is where that road is going to be closed. It's
So
going to
So
come,
there will be no egress on Roan Street for those 2 houses, is that correct?
this house, its driveway is right here on Roan
Okay.
Street, so it didn't use this anyway. And then as you can see here, this driveway is going to come off of the new East Highland.
Would you be able to make a left-hand turn there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So again, just a slightly easier to look at graphic.
That is a good question.
Now I want to talk about why this happened and how this all came to be and why staff believes this is a great proposal that's a win for everybody. These are photos of the property from the top of the hill. So this is where the new East Highland access point is proposed to be. As you can see well down onto South Roan, and you can see far up until this corner. And I have a couple of videos just so you can see what traffic looks like. And again, this is the proposed new East Highland. So that's coming from that direction.
That's great.
And this is coming from the other direction. I mean, you can see a car very far back.
She did a great job with that.
This is what East Highland looks like right now. You cannot see over that hill. So again, going back from that photo and the current site distance to the proposed. So this concept plan took a development proposal and it's actually alleviated a problem that was pre-existing that wasn't even tied to this development. For that reason, staff recommends approval. And I'm here for any questions you may have.
Was that your idea to move the road?
Oh gosh, absolutely not. that was Public Works.
Okay, great idea.
Any other questions for staff?
So the current road parcel, what happens to that? Is it dedicated, what happens to the land that's currently East Highland?
So, if we'll go back right here, it actually, because it's closed right-of-way, is gonna go and join onto this property right here. So it actually made this parcel a bit bigger.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Warren. I'll open the floor for public comment. Is anyone here to speak to the question or issue? Please come forward to the microphone and state your name and address.
Chandler with Berry Engineers. Our address is 63 Broad Street, Cleveland, Tennessee. I'm just here to answer any questions you may have about that. We're just a civil engineer on that job. Just echoing what Peyton said earlier, essentially everything from the driveway on top of the hill right has been unchanged. The only thing changed has really been the adjustment on East Highland. So,
Thank you very much. Any questions or conversation?
Peyton, how far back does that type 1 buffer go towards the road on the left?
I'm sorry, which buffer?
The top middle buffer,
This?
correct. How far will that go to the left there?
The type 1 buffer goes all the way through to the PB line.
To the PV line, okay, so it'll stop before it hits the 2 apartments they plan to put in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so this type 1 buffer is required because the planned business is abutting residential. But because this is R4 going to R4, they don't have to have a buffer right there.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a question, and, so on the house there on the corner of East Highland that does not have access from East Highland right now, but only has access from South Rome, but it does face East Highland. doesn't it? The one on the corner, does it face Roan? Never
This,
mind.
this house right here?
Yes, I was thinking it faced East Highland,
I thought it did too.
but it's faced, I think it does face East Highland, because that's the garage going in there. I guess where I'm going is there a notification process for them? Have they been consulted, about the road?
Was there a neighborhood meeting about it?
About the front of their house suddenly becoming the side? Because I'm pretty sure it's the side.
Public Works has been in communication with the homeowner.
Okay.
I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, discussion amongst the commission. Any other questions for staff?
I'll make a motion for approval of the ordinance as presented by staff.
Second.
Yeah.
All right, discussion for the motion.
Thank you. I think it sort of faces, it's sort of the other, yes. That is definitely the front. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Who is the second? I'm sorry.
Rowena, Ms.
Okay.
Bailey, Commissioner Bailey.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no discussion, go ahead and call the roll, please, Nicole.
Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockmiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner Oshinbain?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Whitfield?
Yes.
And Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes,
Motion approved as presented.
thank you. All right, for the second item on old business, I think we have a bylaws question that we need to resolve. It was left over from last month.
Yes, and the language that y'all discussed at the end of the meeting is before you, and basically says nominees shall be present at the election meeting to accept the nomination in person. In instances of a nominee's absence, the election meeting, a written declaration of their intent may be used. Does that work for everybody?
Any discussion?
Works for me. I appreciate you guys changing that.
Good work.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the new bylaws, reading Article 4.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Nicole, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockmiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner Oshinbain?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Whitfield?
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. All right, Garland Family General Partnership property on Ridgetop Drive extension. Will, I believe you're up.
All right, this is, as you said, Chairman, request for preliminary plat approval for, this is the section of property that's in question here. These roughly 10 acres, well, it's 10-plus acres. Maybe not so much here because I drew this line to give you a general idea of the 10 acres that we're talking about for this plat. Just for your Chestnut Cove, which we just saw, would, if you had a full map here, would be over here. This is the Garland Farm subdivision. At one point, there was an intent to develop this subdivision and continue it this way. There was never a concept plan for this, so there was no need to come back for a concept plan amendment. But the owner of the property, Michael Garland, has decided that he wants to develop this or sell this for one single-family house, which is fine. It's a Washington, it's zoned R1, it's Washington County Zoning Regional Planning Commission. We have subdivision authority over this. And the big thing with this plat is that really it's a 10 acre tract, which typically does not trigger a subdivision because it's greater than 5 acres. That can be done by meets and bounds survey. But since they were having to come to us for a road dedication for the cul-de-sac that I'm getting ready to show, we decided to go ahead and just have it platted here by the planning commission. So these are the minimum lot size. Obviously, with this 10 acres, there's no issues with any of the setbacks or lot widths or. This is a look at the plat here. As we discussed, it's a 10-acre lot with 0.13 miles extension of Ridgetop Circle to be dedicated, which will there was no issues with the owner in presenting this. They actually came to us. Typically on these sorts of things, we see people asking if they can get a driveway permit and just connect to the stub. He had actually proposed through a preliminary plat to do this cul-de-sac. So it's a really nice way to round out the existing subdivision. And of course, he would like to dedicate it so he doesn't have cars going down the street and turn around the cul-de-sac on private property. There's no sidewalk requirement for the cul-de-sac, and the cul-de-sac has to have a 50-feet radius, which this does, and that's been reviewed by Public Works. We recommend approval of the preliminary plat. Yes, sir.
So is this just a subdivision approval, or is there an annexation with it as well?
There is an annexation pending that has been requested, but that has nothing to do with this plat. This is just the right-of-way dedication, whether the annexation happens or not. This lot meets all the county requirements. It would meet our requirements as well. But you will see this probably in the next month or two. That particular portion may well be coming to you as an annexation. Of course, that could be withdrawn at any time. And that preliminary plat actually could serve for the property description.
And Public Works has approved the cul-de-sac.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but the cul-de-sac will reside on his property in the county?
The cul-de-sac will be dedicated after final plat approval to the city, so it will not be on that property. The public right-of-way will be extended. The public right-of-way will be, well, the cul-de-sac will cross the property line here, but with the dedication to the city, it's no longer on part of the no longer on private property. It will be city right-of-way. Because
Okay.
we're accepting the extension of Ridgetop Circle with the cul-de-sac.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the clarification.
Yep.
No other questions for staff. I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone here to speak to the question? Seeing none, I'm going to close public hearing. All right, any discussion amongst the commission?
Does Mr. Deacons have to be involved in some way with this being county property until it's annexed?
We will advise them and keep them in the loop, but the city and the Regional Planning Commission has subdivision authority and the acceptance of this
So
road.
they can take that.
It will become a city street.
Okay, so they can take the dedication even though it's on, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat request.
Second.
All right, a motion and second on the floor. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll. Nicole?
Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockmiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner Oshenbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Whitfield?
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item is a voluntary annexation, plan of services and zoning assignment for property along Bristol Highway.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself on that item.
Okay, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself on this item.
You've got a personal connection to the item?
Yes, to the client.
Okay, thank you.
I'm also going to recuse myself. I have a client that's speaking in opposition to this.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Bourne, could you present, please?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Don't think so.
Good evening.
In front of you, I have the Plan of Services and Zoning Assignment Review for the voluntary annexation of approximately 4.7 acres along the Bristol Highway. So I'm just going to start with a quick overview of the annexation timeline, and I think that that will be helpful for anyone here to speak to the item as well. So right now, we are here on May 10th, and you guys are recommending on the plan of services and the zoning assignment. After this is going to go to City Commission for June 2nd, June 16th, and July 7th for a variety of different things. But I think that is important and should be of note is that public will have the opportunity to speak tonight and also have the opportunity to speak, if it makes it to this point, on July 7th. Now, the request is from A&L RV Sales, and again, they're requesting approximately 4.7 acres be annexed to the city. Now, again, the annexation corresponds with the plan of services that has been in your packet, and the applicant is also seeking a zoning assignment of B4. And you guys are recommending on both of those things in one motion tonight. Currently in the county, it is split zoned. So this purple that you see is a commercial zoning, and this yellow that you see is a residential zoning. So the front half that faces immediately on the Bristol Highway is commercially zoned, and this back half is residentially zoned. And this is all the parcel in question. Now, a little bit on the history of this site. There have been 3 denied commercial rezoning attempts in Sullivan County to rezone this entire parcel to match the zoning of the front piece, a commercial zoning. The most recent of which was December of 2021. County staff recommended approval. The vote was 10 yes, 2 commissioners abstained, 7 no, and 5 were absent. And it would have needed 13 yeses to pass. And as Nicole has explained, the abstentions actually go with the majority, so technically this motion failed by 1 vote. Now I want to talk a little bit about the zoning assignment. The proposed zoning is B4 on this entire parcel. There is no concept plan because annexations do not require a concept plan. However, there are plans to do RV sales, and the applicant owns an RV sales lot across and is intending on expanding his business to this lot as well. But again, this is non-binding. And it is currently split zoned in the county, and it is also currently adjacent to the city B4. So all of this right here that comes down to here is B4. And there would be a type 2 landscape buffer required along here and here, where it abuts residential. And again, this whole parcel would front and access on the Bristol Highway. Now, the future land use map does have this back half going as residential and this front half as going commercial. But staff does think it's important to note that given the fact that this property does face the Bristol Highway, it does make it a little bit difficult to develop residentially because they would have to have their primary access along the Bristol Highway as opposed to North Austin Springs Road, which is a much more appropriate residential road. Now I want to take a second and talk about some photos of the property. So I have a map of the property so I can kind of show you exactly where I'm taking these photos. So in this picture right here, I am right here. So you're looking out and you're seeing RVs on the existing commercially zoned piece. And this back half is all of this. And so here's what you see looking out this back half of this lot is this. And I have a few more photos of the property. Again, the RVs, so this is the commercially zoned point. And you can see that right up here is where it goes into this area. So this is just looking over that back half of the property. As you can see in this map, right here, they have added a stormwater feature. And you can see that that's that stormwater feature manifested right there. And I would also like to note that the stormwater feature backs up to these residentials.
Was that already there, the stormwater feature?
No, it was not already there. The applicant added that. And it was permitted through the county. And so now in these pictures right here, I'm back and you can even kind of see this dirt. I am right here. So you can see there is a significant slope down to the residential, but you can see where this does abut residential, and you can see. And then again, from this point, you can see this house right here. And again, I would like to note that a type 2 buffer will be required right here.
Could you just, after your presentation, just describe what a type 2 buffer is to everyone, please, after your presentation?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, Jamie, I think that is very relevant, and I wrote it down because I knew I would not remember it. So a type 2 buffer can be one of two things. It can either be a 20-foot buffer with 14 evergreens, or it can be a 15-foot buffer, but you have to have a 6-foot fence and 8 evergreens. And now going into,
Sorry, when you say 8 evergreens, 8 foot or 8, the number of,
what? Every 100 feet.
So 8 feet, there was something about 20 feet tall. So I'm guessing, is there a requirement for the height of the evergreens when they're planted? Not the height that they will grow to?
5 feet,
Minimum of 5 feet, okay, to start out with.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So moving on from the buffer conversation, the plan of services was attached in your packet, and it was reviewed by all applicable agencies. Now, the estimated tax revenue for this property is between $5,000 and $7,500 a year. Again, this is the vicinity map. Staff recommends approval. Again, I think that it's important to note that this property will have to adhere to the buffer requirement. And again, this property is accessed off of Bristol Highway. It is adjacent to an existing business. It's got B4 in the city surrounding it, and staff believes that this is an appropriate request.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. Questions for staff?
I thought the annexation questions were going to the city commission first and then coming back here.
It did, and City Commission approved the request to proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peyton.
Good job. I like the videos.
Yeah, that's nice. Any questions for Peyton
Yeah.
before we move forward? I'm going to open the public floor for comment, and before I do that, I want to make reference for the record of the correspondence that we've received and that we have in our packets. One from a Janet Wright and family, one from a Dr. Lisa Beregi and Dr. Alan Stevens, one from a Sharon Tomlinson, and a correspondence from Captain Roger Conway. These are all people that live adjacent to the property. So, Nicole, could you make sure those are entered into the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyone here to speak to the question? If you are, please raise your hand, come forward one at a time. State your name and address at the podium, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm fully prepared. I didn't know I needed to submit pictures.
You didn't need to,
Okay.
but your name and address?
I'm Sharon Tomlinson. I reside at 1284 North Austin Springs Road. Sent emails stating my feelings and concerns as well as my neighbors. Mr. Stover has tried to do this 3 times in Sullivan County and been turned down. We do not want him in our neighborhood. That should be obvious after 20 years. He purchased the property next to him from Wade Hughes. They used earth-moving equipment and dynamite to totally level this residential property behind our homes. The blasting and dust created by moving all that earth was unbelievable. We had our home completely pressure washed after this, although it's brick. Since last spring, an alarm goes off on his property during the night. It blares out, "Get off my property. Police have been called," and then the sound of gunshots. Several neighbors have heard this during the night. We asked that it be turned off, and so far it hasn't. Mr. Stover doesn't appear to like rules and has been breaking them lately. Is this the point that I show the pictures, or?
Yes, you're welcome to.
Okay. I've got them numbered. I do have them numbered. Okay, exhibits 1, 2, and 3 show RVs parked at the end of our property during Easter week, which was April the 11th through the 19th. 2 attempts to contact him, and finally on Tuesday after Easter, he moved them. Exhibit 4 is recent. It's been this past weekend. We could see this from our upstairs family room. Took pictures. The trailers are just right there, just looming over our backyard. And then Exhibit 5 shows the division between what is commercial and residential in this location of Mr. Stover's. And anyone can see that he is parked on residential property. He's brought his trailers down onto the residential. The zoning plat that I have given you, or that you all made available, makes this obvious. Do you have a question?
Ms. Thompson, that's
Yes.
just 2.5 minutes, just giving you a warning on time. That's
Oh,
2.5
am I
minutes.
going over?
No, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. Well, let's see here. Okay, when this property belonged to Sandra Merkel, it was a large farm, and it was divided up in decades ago. And her property and others along 11E were divided and sold. A precedent was established that property facing Austin Springs Road would remain residential, facing 11E would be commercial. I've also provided a petition from all of our neighbors that do not want this. We just want peace and quiet in our neighborhood. I don't want trailers. There's a lot of noise now, and it'll probably get worse. And we have nice homes. You look out our back door, and there he is. 8 trees will not cover this. 8 trees will maybe cover my yard, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
Could you restate something, please, for me? You were talking about there was an agreement that something would be,
There
could
was
you
a
restate that?
precedent set in Sullivan County. We learned that 20 years ago.
Can you tell me about it one more time, please? I'm sorry.
Any property that faces Austin Springs is supposed to stay residential. Any property facing 11E is commercial. There's a ridge that runs through Piney Flats, and actually, Mr. Stover tore that ridge out of these 2 pieces of land, his commercial and his residential. He blasted that ridge out of there.
Okay,
So we get all the noise off of 11E.
thank you.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, let's hold just a moment on public comments while we circulate these documents amongst us. We'll look at them, and then we'll give them back to you. Or we'll keep them for the record.
I'll need them for the record.
We'll need them for the record. Is that okay?
Peyton, while we're looking at these documents, Peyton, can I ask you a question? And maybe rest of the staff could also help. What is their most dense buffer requirement? I know what the R2 is now, but do we have a buffer that provides more density?
Well, I think the first thing on that is it's not 8 trees, as the concerned citizen just stated. It's 8 feet every 100 feet. So there's that. There are higher degrees.
8 trees per every 100 feet.
8 trees
Okay.
per every 100 feet.
If there's a
Correct.
fence.
So that's a great deal different than 8 trees total, obviously. Now, there are type 3 and type 4 buffers. I would probably caution against imposing one of those on the applicant, because that's not what they're required to do per the code, but there are type 3 and type 4 buffers.
Okay. My second question is,
The difference being the width. Add another 15 feet, so a type 3 would be 35 feet or 25 feet, depending if you do the
Okay.
all tree or combination
Fair
of
enough.
fence and tree. Yes, sir.
with this being a rezoning, are there any overlays,
This is not a rezoning, it's an annexation.
since this is an annexation, are there any overlays that this would butt up against?
I think it's in the corridor overlay.
So are there any requirements that we should, this is something I've brought up in the past, anytime that we have overlays that are existing and we look at either a rezoning or bring a property in through an annexation, whether or not they should be part of that overlay. Have we examined that at all?
I have
From a
not looked,
staffer
I have not
perspective?
looked in depth into any overlay requirements, just because this is from a land use perspective, but I do think that there is value in looking into that, and that's certainly something that I can research.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so it does fall within the corridor overlay on the front side, so he would have to meet that.
Is the applicant aware of that?
I'm not sure,
Probably not.
sir.
And do you know the design standards for that overlay, Preston, why you got pulled up?
Yes, but they're gonna be really limited to the building typology. And, I mean, we can pull those up, but they're gonna be building related, not necessarily landscape related.
I understand.
Essentially, with the corridor overlay, you're looking at, it's not as stringent as the gateway overlay or the design overlay, which has heavy material requirements with a certain percentage of brick and that sort of thing. In the corridor overlay, there has to be some sort of architectural detail to avoid long unbroken facades, whether those be, a peak here or there in the roof line or some sort of column or architectural feature to make it not look unbroken, and then any mechanical equipment would need to be screened.
Describe mechanical equipment.
HVAC type stuff or compressors, that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's about it as far as the design standards for that.
So metal front-facing buildings, fine?
The public meeting's still open. Is anyone else here to speak to the question? Please come forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank
Could
you
you
for
pull the
letting me
mic down to
speak.
you, please?
My name is Janet Wright. I live at 1263 North Austin Springs Road. We've lived there since 2002. And like Ms. Thomason said, this is the third time that we've had to come before a body to try to stop this. We feel that setting a precedent of buying residential property to get it rezoned is not good for their neighborhoods and families. And I would like for you all to look at it as if someone was doing this in your backyard. And was mentioned about how much tax revenue. If you take the property taxes that all the homeowners along our road pay, it was a lot more than $5,000 to $7,000. Also, the fact that Mr. Stover has done all this work before he ever got approval from any governing agency, Sullivan County or Washington County or whatever, it just doesn't seem fair. And I know that Johnson City has very strict building codes and requirements. And so the work that has been done already, is it going to go back and be examined to see if it fits your guidelines, or is it just going to be passed through? And the fact about the recordings, the lights, the security of the neighborhood, there's just an abundance of commercial property available all up and down the Bristol Highway, Sullivan County, Washington County, Johnson City, Bristol. So to come and deliberately buy residential property to turn it into commercial, which can never be turned back into residential, and the damage it's going to do to the neighbors. I just feel like that's something that should really be in the forefront of your minds. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Someone else to speak? Please come forward.
Good day. I'm Dr. Alan Stevens, 1264 North Austin Springs Drive. My wife, Dr. Lisa Bareggi, wrote a letter to, I believe, all the commissioners stating our purposes. This is the back of my house, okay? And I don't want to see an RV sales park on the hill behind me. And I believe she sent a picture of this. I'm not sure what she sent by email. But anyway, that's what we've got. We're looking right at this place. And our neighborhood doesn't want an RV sales lot in their backyards. Definitely don't want to have it to look at it. Understanding is the middle lots were left residential, so there are homes on Austin Springs will not be affected by the highway business zone. This is also why the same rezoning request has been voted against over the last 20 years. We only bought our home 4 years ago as a retirement home. And a lot of the beauty of it was the location and the surroundings. And not only do I look at this lot now, but we can hear the highway traffic coming over it. There was a real good buffer back there. It was called Old Growth Forest, I believe, and they bulldozed it and burned it. And then I've heard people say that they flattened the ridge that I'm not aware of because we never could see it before. And last year, the lot was cleared, flattened, runoff pond built, and prepped for the RV sales center Mr. Stover wants to put there. Since Sullivan County rezoning has refused last December, he has done more work to the lot and even started placing RVs on the property last month. Sullivan County had to remind him that the property was not commercial and he had to move the RVs off. And this was the week before your 21st meeting for his JC annexation request. And I believe she sent pictures with her letter. That's the main thing. We just don't want a RV sales park looking down on us and what us having to look up at it. And we think it'll reduce our home values. And a good buffer was there. It's gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Please come forward.
Rusty Stover, 5745 Hester Court in Piney Flats, Tennessee. We're the owners of the property, and a couple things that they've mentioned that I'd like to point out. They mentioned that the facing property that faces Bristol Highway should be zoned commercial. We have no access to this property from Austin Springs. All that access is Bristol Highway, so that would go to making that commercial. As you could probably see in your pictures there, the ridge is still there because we don't own that part of the ridge. Our piece of property was clear all the way back through, and then it went behind the ridge. We have cleared out that in anticipation of trying to get this rezoned. The Planning Commission in Sullivan County is 3 times have voted in approval of doing this, and the commissioners have voted, and this last time we missed it by 1 vote. And if they'd had all the commissioners there, we may have gotten that vote. I have, where we've already contracted Green Sweep to install Leland cypress. He's got on here 40 Leland cypress trees along the back. That's what the one picture that you saw, the dirt, where you could see the house, the cypress tree was going to go there. And if that buffering requires more than what we've already planned, we'll be more than happy to put that. That's not an issue. The property that is right beside of it, the city rezoned it from residential to commercial for Wade Hughes. He built that building there that we're now using. There's RVs parked there now. It's being used for service for us right now. We actually do not have any plans to put a building on this property. It'd be display area. We'll be using the building that's in the front there as our offices for that display lot. So it'll just be display area there. The property tax has already been mentioned. What hasn't been mentioned is the added sales tax revenue that the city will gain from the extra sales of RVs from that lot. I think it fits in the city's plans of what that highway is to be used for, the Bristol Highway. Everything is commercial there. It has commercial all around it on the side that was rezoned for Mr. Hughes. We've put in the storm drainage. We did get permits for that. We didn't just go do it on a whim. We got permits from through Sullivan County and the state to do that clearing. So we have done that.
Mr. Stover,
Yeah.
30-second warning.
Okay. We did have some RVs parked back there. I had some employees that parked those there that didn't realize that we needed to be in front of the ridge. When the county called us, we had those moved. They're all in front of the ridge, in front of the property line that is commercial. And we just ask for your consideration on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Stover, what is the distance from Bristol Highway to your rear lot line? Do you know
To the which line?
to your rear lot line?
I'm not sure the distance. It's
From the front property line?
Yes, sir. Is it over 300 feet?
to where it starts residential or to the very
No,
end?
just your property line from top to
It's
back.
well over 300 feet, I would think, yes. I'm pretty sure.
660.
660. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so, was this property at one time two lots that have been combined, or is it
No,
still?
it was
two
one
lots?
lot when we bought it.
Okay.
And we actually talked to Sullivan County and their planning commission, and she said, Amber Torbett, we called her about that. She said it was split zone and that they didn't like the split zoning there with the property that entered from the Bristol Highway. They would recommend that that would be rezoned commercial. And we went ahead with the purchase of that property. And she did say if it had access from Austin Springs Road, that they would not be in favor of that because it had access from Austin Springs Road, which we do not have that access from Austin Springs Road for that property.
Mr. Stover, when you talk about a display area, what do you mean by display? What's
We'll
going
be
to be
displaying
displayed?
the RVs for sale. The RVs will be displayed there. If you saw our lot beside or across the road, you'd see the display of RVs there.
Do you anticipate having any type of lighting on the backside of that property?
We have not discussed having lighting there. I don't know that we would need it because, we don't sell after dark.
Okay.
What are your hours of operation?
8:30 to, well, we have service people in the other building, 8:30, 5:30. Sales is 9 to 5:30.
To 5:30?
To 5:30, and they may be there till 6, 6:15 if there's customers there, but they like to get out at 5:30 if they can.
So in having your business on this property, you would need security, correct? You'll probably need security.
We'll have to put fencing up. We're gonna put
Okay.
fencing up around it to just keep somebody from just towing one off.
And do you have an intercom system?
I do not own that property.
Okay.
We do have a security system on the building, and I agree with them. It's been a nuisance. We've tried to get that company to come pick their stuff up. We've canceled that contract. They still haven't come picked it up yet, but we're probably going to end up in a lawsuit with them just to get their stuff picked up off of it. So it'll stop doing what they were saying. And I don't know that it's still even active. And if it is, they can tell me, because I'll call that company again. It was with, can't remember the name of the company, Provigil Security Systems. But the only security that'll be around that will be a fence.
Thank you, Mr. Stover. Thank you. Anyone else to speak to the question?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the Commission, good evening. My name is Roger Conway, and I live at 1280 North Austin Springs Road in Piney Flats. Commissioners, this has been going on for just about 20 years since I have lived there. We have been fighting a running battle over this time through Sullivan County, through the applicant's attempts to get this property rezoned for commercial. I and the rest of my neighbours do not want to look out of our windows in the morning at rows and rows of quite hideous aluminum boxes, is what I would best describe them. I also have a 14-year-old daughter who I adopted from China, recently diagnosed as autistic, who some time ago, whenever this security system that Mr. Stover talks about went off in the middle of the night, was screaming in her room I hear gunshots. I mean, this is a terrible situation. This land was completely denuded of vegetation, wildlife, cleared. The hillside was blasted just coming up to Christmas. I thought I was living back in Northern Ireland again from the explosions that were shaking my windows. I want to register my very strong objection to this being annexed, this parcel of land. And I can't say how strongly enough I agree with all of the residents in this area. This is something that really we do need your wholehearted consideration and thought as to whether or not you would actually like to wake up to this and look out on these white aluminum boxes every day. Also, I believe that the tax revenue from this is probably less than you might think these days. To go ahead and annex property like this is something that Mr. Stover has talked about from the very beginning. He has intended and indeed expects this property to be rezoned to his wishes. He has moved in and cleared the land ahead of schedule because he expects this to be approved. I thank you for your time and ask your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Conway.
Anyone else here to speak to the question? You have to be in person. Seeing no one else, I'll close the floor for public hearing. All right, conversation amongst staff.
Mr. Commissioner, if I could call Whitney or Preston or someone of the planning team to.
Lay out your question, and we'll figure out who's the right person to
Okay,
speak
sure,
to.
that'll work. So I would like to talk through what's directly located on the Bristol Highway. What businesses or what entities are directly located on that highway?
Would that help?
Yeah, I'm trying to see what's consistent along the road. What fits in the pattern of what's already there.
I think that there are two RV dealers, petrol station, fuel station.
Yeah.
Tractor Supplies right there.
Just on the same side of the road.
On the same side of the road.
Dollar General is I think there's a stone place as well.
Because I heard what was previously stated, there, residential there's a piece of that property that's directly on Bristol Highway. The chances are they're never going to put a house right on the highway. So addressing that little piece on the road is, wanting to deal with that area first and then work back. What I am hearing is no one wants to see the RV, the aluminum boxes. So how do you create a better site? But there's land there to think through and process. But
No, the other way. There we go.
But just thinking out.
Tell you folks from Asheville don't know your way around very well. That's even scarier.
There you go.
It's right there.
There you go, right there.
You're on it.
Yep.
I don't know what I've done.
Where are we?
You're, go,
Didn't mean to do that. I just wanted, okay.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm gonna close out of this now. Okay. It's this, right here.
Gotcha.
Can you change that to a satellite image? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, would you rather have a satellite or would you rather have our street view?
Street?
I know. Okay. So here is, as you can see, this is the property right here. This is next door to it. If you want to turn around over this way, that's RV sales over there. I'm not really sure what that is.
Appalachian Service Project is back there.
Appalachian Service
Yeah,
Project.
aluminum.
Let's say we drive, these are those vacant vacant commercial lots in the county, in Sullivan County right here.
So that's all commercial.
And then as you drive around here, it looks like there's a gas station up there. Right on the corner over here is a Dollar General.
There are
if you
four
could drive.
vacant commercial lots.
Here is
between the
another
property in question and the Dollar
RV
General.
sales center. Sorry, what was
There
that?
are four vacant commercial lots between the between the property in question and the Dollar General
There,
Tractor Supply.
yes, if you keep going down this way, yeah, there's a Tractor Supply here, there's a Dollar General somewhere. I drove by it today, I used it to turn around. But yes, these right here, as you saw on the map earlier, those are the undeveloped commercial lots in Sullivan County.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
So,
there's
so if
another
those are
RV.
commercial, the property in question, right beside it on the corner is currently residential, correct? The property in question?
I'm not really sure what
This
property
one,
you're
right here.
talking about,
What
Commissioner
is it?
Murphy?
What is since it's not in the city and it's in the county, what is
What's
its
it current?
current zoning in the county?
Thank you.
This is the county zoning right here,
Is that commercial?
It's commercial in the front, residential in the back.
correct?
Okay,
Gotcha.
so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
So that kind
Yeah,
of
so
goes.
these are the vacant commercial lots I was talking
Commercials.
about,
Okay.
Commissioner,
So
and
that-
you can better see them here.
So that kind of goes back to my question earlier about the distance from front to back. Is it, from a planning perspective, is it somewhat normal to have a 300-foot commercial buffer and then residential in behind it? But because this property doesn't have access to Austin Springs, that's why the county may have recommended it go away from the split zoning?
Yes, the split zoning makes it really difficult to develop either way. It's just not very friendly on development. So split zoning is highly discouraged, just like I talked about kind of in my last presentation with Dollar General. Split zoning is something that you typically want to get away from. And so, and I'm not trying to speak for Ms. Torbett, but we had a in-depth conversation about her recommendation and her staff report, and she said pretty much the same thing that you guys heard, that this property is facing the Bristol Highway, and as such, it's going to make this back half really difficult to develop residentially because, there's, again, commercial
landlocked.
surrounding all over, and it doesn't have any access to Austin Springs.
So it would be landlocked, basically, right? Without that ingress from,
Correct, yes. If you didn't access the Bristol Highway, it would be landlocked. Because there, again, is no access to Austin Springs.
thank you.
What is the zoning on the dot to the right? The other one that looks rather landlocked right there. What is the zoning on that one?
I believe it's a type of residential. This is the county map, and I don't have the key to it, but if I recall from when I was looking at it, it was a type of residential. But again, going back to that, this accesses Austin Springs Road. Yes, so this does not access the Bristol Highway. This accesses North Austin Springs.
I thought it was also landlocked.
That's gonna be that's a pickle.
And actually, looking at it, it looks like it's split zoned as well.
So even though we're looking at annexation, what type of zoning would come with it from a staff perspective? Or are we allowed to answer that question?
I would, from a staff planning perspective, my recommendation would be that it go commercial. I agreed with Ms. Torbett.
Be at a number?
I think that B4 is appropriate. Again, it's along the Bristol Highway. It's surrounded by B4. It's next door to B4.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation, Commissioner Popovich.
Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Yes.
I've closed public comment. I'm sorry, sir. I've closed public comment. I'm sorry, sir.
Can we,
Additional discussion?
since, I don't, personally, I don't think, if he has something to say, I wouldn't mind opening up the.
All right, I've had a
public
request to open public. You come forward, please.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I have the original plot here in my hand of this property that was sold. And it plainly shows the right-of-way coming off Bristol Highway into the back of this property. Now, over a period of time, that right-of-way has disappeared for some reason or other. But anyway, I want to know that this, you guys would like to look at this plot, and I'd let you have it.
Preston, you care to look at it?
Yeah, it's, what it appears to show is that lot 6 was actually pulled into this lot at some point. Otherwise, the lot lines are the same.
Okay, so that just, that,
Yeah.
yeah,
See how skinny that was before?
Right.
Now it's wider. Okay.
Can you make a right-of-way disappear like that?
No,
I don't know.
We'd be happy to talk to you about that out in the hall, but there doesn't appear to be legal right-of-way like Bristol Highway right-of-way. It's more property, and so,
So that's not a legal right-of-way then?
no, sir, it's part of the property. Right,
Hey,
so it's actually part of their property.
Right, it's still part of the property, I agree, but there's a right-of-way back to that property. You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all my point I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for entertaining that. Appreciate it.
Any other public comment? Please come forward.
Stevens, 1264 North Austin Springs. That property that's right next to this extends all the way down to Austin Springs Road. The neighbors on either side mow it. So that's how they're seeing it. It's not their land. They just keep it mowed because it's adjacent to their land. It's not real wide, but it is a right-of-way, and it does connect Austin Springs. And it's the piece that was cut off when they were showing the stuff up here, the lot. Comes all the way to Austin Springs. That's what neighbors told me that take care of it.
All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate the information.
Close the floor. All right, discussion amongst the commission, please.
I think what I'm having to wrestle with and have been since we got this packet last week, and having gone out to the site and looked at the site and walked around, if just some kind of guidance for us as a commission or for me as a commissioner of, how do we approach something like this? And if I go back to the comprehensive plan for 2020 and look at the annexation guidelines and the criteria that we've talked about before, it says criteria 1.5, 2.4, areas considered for annexation shall be consistent with adopted land use policies for the city. So if you go to the land use plan, it's proposed the site to be commercial and residential, the split zoning. So commercial in the front piece and residential in the back. And so even from that, even following our own annexation guidelines, it looks like this should be kept commercial in the front and residential back, which sounds like what the neighborhood wants as well. Is that tenable? I don't know. But thinking about granting this annexation to come forward into the city, that's what I wrestle with.
To me, it looked like, I agree with everything you said, because I think that at some point that property, Sean and I were just talking about, it was probably all connected to that flag property on the right. And the access off Austin Springs would have kept that all residential on that flag property. So that would have been your ingress, egress for maybe a multifamily type situation.
So, the quest, as I understand, it's like, bring them into the city, change it so it's all commercial. But based on how I read our guidelines, it says we should follow the land use plan. The land use plan says it should stay commercial in the front and residential in the back.
And my question is how far does back go? Is it 300 feet? Is it
660 feet.
And that's set by and who set that number? And how?
So,
no,
first of all,
300.
the roughly 660 feet is just the depth of the parcel.
sorry.
That's just the depth from this point right here to this point back here.
Because there is
And-
there is other businesses on that do go back deeper.
Correct. In fact, right next door, there is additional, if you saw here, there's this business right here that reaches all the way back to the end of the property line. So if this is roughly 660 feet, the property next door is reaching, 700 feet back. And so, what you have on Bristol Highway, this is a tough one, and you've got you have a federal highway, actually, 5 lanes, divided highway, and so, actually 4 lanes with periodic 5, but exceptionally wide, behaves really like not an interstate, but
It has speeds of interstate.
I'm sorry? Yeah, well, like it
Highway.
behaves like an intercity highway, and so it also typically in more modern situations would have limited access to it, and you would have frontage roads and things like that accessing properties. The way that it is built out is that you don't have frontage roads, you don't have limited access, and so you have both large and small lots having immediate access to this very wide federal highway. So it is a strange and somewhat disjointed typical development pattern that you would see in the 70s and 80s. And so that's not to say anything's wrong with it, that's just how it has happened. And then along the back sides of those properties, especially where you have recreational assets like the lake, it's typical you're going to get those nice homes like that. And so this kind of friction, like 2 plates between those large commercial lots up against this highway, backing up to these fine residential homes, unfortunately, this is a very normal thing. And so what's being asked of you is whether or not the B4 zoning is the most appropriate zoning for this annexation. The City Commission has already expressed interest in just investigating the annexation. They've not voted on the annexation. In fact, that would take 2 more hearings. But they have expressed interest in it. The plan of services has been provided to you. All the departments and agencies that provide public services through the city have reviewed the plan of services and made their comments, and that's been provided to you. And as this is considered, sort of considered infill development, it would not be difficult, and I say that with kind of quotation marks around it, to extend public services in a reasonable manner to this property. So the question comes down to the zoning assignment, and is the B4 the most appropriate zoning assignment? I think Ms. Voren did a great job of addressing the land use issue that Dr. Whitfield's jumping right into, and I'm glad you're doing it, because I think that's the right place to be. That's where you need to be in terms of this debate. When these future land use maps are drawn, it is virtually impossible. And obviously, none of us, the staff that's here today, we weren't here when that future land use map was drawn back in, I believe that one was either done in 01 or 07. But very rarely do they ever match parcel lines. It's you're talking about a city that's 45 square miles now. Back then was probably 40-something square miles. There's no way you can draw a future land use map that matches parcel lines. Plus, parcel lines change. So your future land use maps are intended to be somewhat broad strokes. And so where it splits like that, you then have the question of access, development patterns in the area, compatibility, consistency. And so what Ms. Voren was stating was, yes, there is a split right down the middle, so to speak, of this land use designation, but because the access is entirely off of Bristol Highway, because there is no access to Austin Springs, and because of the other commercial in the area, it was her belief and ultimately staff's belief that the B4 was an appropriate district. Now, I think that your questions about the landscape buffering, right on point. Your questions about the overlay, right on point. Placing RVs out there on a gravel lot are really not going to kick in any of the overlay requirements. If he was to build a building, absolutely. All those things that Mr. Ryder mentioned, all those are going to come into play. But just placing RVs out there, which is not illegal in the B4, wouldn't really trigger any of the overlay requirements. So what you're looking at really is the landscape buffering and the question of, do you believe that the type 2 buffer is adequate to buffer these folks that are on North Austin Springs?
Good points. Would that parking lot have to be paved based on our guidelines though, instead of gravel?
We'd have to double check. I can do that. Let me double check. Because it's not considered a parking lot in terms of like a parking lot that you would have at a retail outlet. But let me dig into that.
As far as like even ADA goes, to get people on the grounds?
If there were a building, right?
Well, I'm just,
Yeah. Yeah.
no paid parking? Okay. Okay, thank you. So I forgot, what is being requested of us tonight?
Annexation and zoning.
Requesting B4 to concept plan. Okay. So Chairman, I'll jump off and make a motion, if that's okay.
Please.
For my motion, I would like to state to the homeowners, this is a land use committee and not a political entity where we just focus on the land use. The city commission looks at the neighborhoods and things like that. So although I understand your plight, understand why you feel the way you do, I would feel the same way. But our job here is just to look at land use. And from what I can see, I'm going back and forth with staff, it does fit our current land use. So I would recommend that we take staff's recommendation and approve the annexation plan of services and zoning assignment.
So you make that as a motion?
I do.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is that we accept staff's recommendation for the plan of services for annexation and for the B4 zoning assignment. Is that correct, Nicole?
That is correct.
Discussion about the motion.
I have a question, of course.
Okay.
And this may not be an appropriate question at this time, so you can tell me it's not. But, so, I wanted some clarification, I guess, from staff, and this might be a Mr. Mitchell question, as to things that we can consider when making a decision. I know I've served on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and it was very, very cut and dried. Neighborhood input really didn't matter. If it met the requirements for the zoning appeal, then you granted the zoning variance, the zoning variance. So neighbors would come and speak, but we really didn't have any room to consider that. With this body, do we have room to consider that?
really glad that you asked the question, because I know this is, well, seriously, because this is something that we're struggling with right now with the Historic Zoning Commission and with the BDSR, and there are these different rules for these different bodies.
Right.
Absolutely. Good question. So the Planning Commission acts in the manner that you're referencing, like the BZA. Planning Commission acts in that manner where it's all evidence-based and limited scope in terms of, or limited conversation, and you have to make your decision based off of the evidence that you've received by staff and at the meeting, and all of that is really limited to the subdivision requests. So when Mr. Ryder was up here talking about the final plat and things like that, those are evidence-based decisions. Outside of the subdivision plats, when you're getting into zoning, a rezoning, a text amendment, things like that, it is wide open. And so that's where you can, it's not evidence-based, it can be opinion-based. And so these folks who have expressed some have brought forth evidence. You saw that there were some photographs, you saw that there was a plat, you saw that there were, so some people brought evidence and some people simply came with their opinion. And so in a legislative matter like this, a zoning matter or an annexation matter, that's entirely okay, and it's all open to being able to receive all that information. But in terms of the decision you're making, there is unfortunately no ability to add conditions to an annexation. So even though it's a legislative one and you can discuss kind of everything under the sun, we can't add conditions such as, you know, extra buffer or extra fence or this, that, or the other. Those can be done in different circumstances, but not for an annexation. You're being asked to apply a zoning designation, and then if that zoning designation, if you feel that it's the appropriate one, all the rights and entitlements and the development standards that are in that bag of B4, it's like a big bag of B4 Legos, all those things in that B4 bag can occur.
So, but in this situation, we are considering the zoning code and the evidence, but we also can consider the impact as expressed by the neighbors.
Absolutely.
That is a valid.
You absolutely can.
consideration.
Absolutely. Very good
And also
question.
the impact on the property owners as well,
Yeah, absolutely.
the zoning. Okay.
Very, yeah,
Thank you very
excellent
much.
question.
Thank you for that. Okay, we have a question, a motion and a second on the floor. Any additional discussion?
I know we talked about the buffer zone and the spacing of trees and things of that sort. I know there's this big obstructable view of RVs from the neighbors' houses. I just hope that's addressed. And I think, Mr. Ryder, you clarified the levels of buffered. And from what I understand, Preston says we can't have certain, we can't switch that up per zoning, right? You can't have like a buffer 3 for a B4. You can't mix and match, right?
Right. We have to, we need to stick to what the zoning code requires for abutting properties. In this case, it would be a type 2 buffer. So if you approve the B4 zoning and when they come in with a construction plan or a site plan for us to review, we'll ensure that that type 2 buffer is on there. But to ask him to do anything above what's required by the zoning code would be capricious.
Meaning you can't do it, or?
I don't know if we can.
Correct.
Decide
Correct.
without,
There have been planning commissions that have done it and ended up in court, I'm sure.
I wonder what will happen with the property if it is not approved with the B4 now that it's been graded and rocked.
I mean, I'm assuming the applicant could develop it still residential if they pursued to. apartments, small, high density. I don't know if that would be better for the neighborhood or not.
From a public works perspective, we don't have any, during the annexation process, we have no control whether the property owner continues to grade out and do improvements to the land. Is that correct?
Right now, it's under the jurisdiction of Sullivan County.
So we couldn't do nothing anyway,
Yeah.
as of right now.
Right. Until it's officially annexed, it is under Sullivan County's jurisdiction, and anything would have to go through them.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Let's limit our conversations to that question. Any other discussion? Nicole, please call the roll.
Before I call the roll, I just wanted to state that the two commissioners who are abstaining from vote, I do need to call your name, and you need to verbally let me know you abstain for the record. Commissioner Bailey?
No.
Commissioner Lockmiller?
No.
Commissioner Murphy?
No.
Commissioner Oceanbine?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Mays?
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Rhodey? Vice Chairman Whitfield?
No.
Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes.
Okay, so with the abstentions, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the motion did not pass.
I wasn't counting.
Yeah, so we
It's 4 to
have
3.
1, 2, 3, 4 against, 1, 2, 3, 3 people for, and 2 abstentions, so the abstentions will go with the against. So the motion has failed.
Motion's failed.
Which means we're still here.
Yeah, we're not done.
Right.
Yeah, we have to.
So I'll make a second motion to deny the annexation plan and zoning assignment.
Recommend.
Recommend denial to the
City
city
Commission.
commission, correct?
Well, so this is a good kind of a planning 101 exercise for everybody. So what you have in front of you is not the request for the annexation. What you have in front of you is the plan of services and zoning assignment. So you're unable to make a motion to not annex. You're able to make a motion to not apply that B4 zoning assignment. Now, so if you're not in favor of the B4 zoning assignment, you could turn that down, and then you could recommend another zoning district. Or if you wanted, because we're in this little bit of a quandary here, you could recommend that we send this to a committee, and the committee discuss what would be an appropriate zoning classification, because only the commission can recommend approval or denial of the annexation. You guys are needing to give us recommendation on the plan of services and then the zoning assignment. And if you're struggling with the zoning assignment, then you're only struggling with the cream in the Oreo. And so we need to.
I thought the commission would say yes or no to annexation, and we would make a recommendation on the annexation.
No, you're making a recommendation on the plan of services and the zoning assignment.
So can we recommend that it remain as is? Because that to me is what it felt like we were voting on, that.
It's still in the county, right?
Right, it's in the county now. So, no, I mean, your all's conversation has been spot on, because it's been right where it needs to be in terms of the zoning assignment. Do you all, if you're not in favor of the B4 zoning assignment, then you could recommend a zoning assignment, but because we've not had that conversation, I would really recommend that we do that in a committee setting.
I agree.
And then come back, and that way you're not, because if you make a recommendation on a zoning assignment, you're really shooting from the hip.
Right.
And I think that would be, that's not beneficial to the neighbors or to the applicant.
Because I would say if we made a recommendation on the zoning assignment, we would probably not make it all one,
Right,
based on if it is annexed and it does come back.
right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I was.
Okay, can somebody phrase a motion?
Benjamin, go ahead.
So we'll make a recommendation or make a motion that we table this and move it to a subcommittee meeting to be discussed and come back to us at a further date.
Is there a clock ticking on that?
No, well, I mean, there's a clock ticking in terms of,
Do we have 90 days? Is that what it is?
no, it's not like a QJ thing, no. I mean, but we're gonna keep it, we're gonna keep it rolling. So, yeah, I mean, we will need to have the committee meeting between now and your June meeting.
I have two questions. So one, since we've denied the ask, will this question now go to the city commission?
You haven't denied it yet, so so the last motion failed. So
Yes.
you've still got this conversation on the table. And so someone could move to deny the B4 zoning assignment. If you move to deny the B4 zoning assignment, then it's going to the city commission with no zoning assignment, and we can't do that. And so that's why we need a zoning assignment from you. And if you're struggling with the B4, I would recommend that we have that conversation at strategic committee so that we're not just picking a zoning assignment out of the hat.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, I want to just state where I'm struggling is the buffer zone. I'm just speaking personally.
Sure.
Okay. But if something could be better done for B4, I'll be willing to.
We can't modify the
I
B4.
understand that, but I just
Yeah.
want to state where I am.
Sure.
Okay.
But you could at the commission.
The owner could do it on his own accord. We can't force it, but if the, the owner
understood.
wanted to put in a bigger or a denser buffer, one of the type 3 or the type 4, if they agreed to do that, that would be up to the owner. But nothing we can require, but that is a possibility if the owner chose to do that himself.
And you can't make that a contingent?
No, I can't, and out of all respect for my,
We can't make it.
yeah, I don't recommend that because this gentleman could be right up there with Moses, but he might also sell it. And if he sells it, the next guy doesn't have to adhere to it. So if you're it sounds like, and I want to be careful here because I need to not guide, but so it sounds like there's not issue, I've not heard any issue with the plan of services in terms of how the city would extend public services to this lot if it was to come into the city.
Correct.
And that's based on the information you got from the different departments that Ms. Boren gave to you. So if the struggle is with the zoning assignment and buffering and other issues like that, I think it would be in everyone's favor, yours and the communities, and I include the applicant in that term, to have this discussion in a committee setting so that we can bring it back to you in June.
Can you describe a little bit more, I'm new at this.
Sure.
A little bit more about the committee process. I know that we have neighbors and a property owner who have very strong feelings about this process, and I don't want to appear that anything is happening behind closed doors that they will not be able to.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
foresee.
Commissioner, you've been on it tonight, so I appreciate that. No, the committee meetings are open to the public because of Tennessee open meetings laws, actually sunshine laws across the United States. But committee meetings are required to be open to the public, so the applicant can be there. Anyone from the public can be at the committee meeting. Now, there may not be public hearings at the committee meetings, but they are open to the public. The reason why I'm recommending that we go to a committee meeting to discuss this is because you've got your planning staff sitting right here. We all have our codes open in front of us. If we're going to discuss a new zoning assignment, you all have a giant agenda in front of you. And then we would have to go through all of the development standards and all the rights and everything associated with other zoning districts that the applicant hasn't discussed with us. And we'd have to essentially be doing everything that we do 5 days a week here right now. and I don't recommend that. I think we would do that better if we could go back, have a conversation with the applicant. Is there another zoning district that you're more comfortable with that might still accommodate your requests, that might also find a way to work better for the neighbors? I don't know yet off the top of my head, but trying to do it here on the dais could be really difficult tonight. Does that help?
So we have a motion and a second.
No, we don't have, we're
Oh, we
done.
have nothing.
Yeah, we're done. We've denied the annexation moving forward.
No.
Do-
No,
Does everyone know?
No, not the annexation.
The annexation is only a city commission issue. We have to give a recommendation on the plan of services and a zoning assignment.
But historically,
I gave, that was my motion for the plan of service, and that was denied, correct?
No. It failed.
It did not fail.
No, but I'm just saying, correct, that's what I did, and then we did not pass it.
Correct.
Correct. Which means that we're still here talking about it.
So it's an open table. It's an open item it's still on the table.
It's still open.
Jamie, correct
Yes.
me, but I thought in the past though, and you correct me as well, in the past, as the commission, we voted on annexation, plan of services, and if it was annexed, a recommended zoning.
No, sir. Well, in the past, you did when annexations were done by ordinance, but annexations are not done by ordinance anymore.
But I think, President, I think probably when you read that, you just automatically see annexation, and you stop at that point. And this was the annexation plan of services and zoning assignment, not annexation.
Right. I mean, just like I would encourage, it's kind of interesting when Peyton came on board, one of the first things I train any new young planner is when you're reading this code, read that whole sentence. You can't stop at any point. And so you have to read the whole sentence. And so you guys your charge is the plan of services and the zoning assignment.
Yeah. So we voted to disagree, and it did not pass for plan of services and zoning. The question now is do we want to take it back to committee, look at the zoning
Perfect.
to see if we want to recommend to the property owner a different zoning since this one failed. But we don't have to do that, I guess, unless someone wants to. We could move on to the next item on the agenda, correct?
Well,
No.
the only thing is that
Oh,
we're
it's gonna be
stuck,
settled.
is that if you don't send it to a committee, and you deny the B4 zoning, then it's going to the commission without a zoning assignment. And
Without
so
a
then,
recommendation of a zoning assignment.
by law,
I see.
they're gonna
Okay.
send it back to you again.
Give
And
us a
I've had this
recommendation.
happen, where
I see.
something can't be decided at the planning commission, and they send it to the city commission, and the city commission says, why did they do that? I don't know. And then they
I
say,
see. I see.
Get
So,
it off our
so
agenda.
okay. Okay, with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to send the voluntary annexation business item to committee for investigation of the B4 recommended assignment as something else, potentially.
sure, that's
To the
fine.
strategy committee.
To the
would you agree
strategy
to that?
committee, correct. To reinvestigate that zoning recommendation
That's
for the
perfect.
June meeting. Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Whitney, do you have something to add? No. We have a motion and a second. So discussion. So we're going to put the plan of services on hold, and we're going to revisit the zoning question in strategy committee, which will be publicly announced right now.
The next strategy committee is on June 1st at 4:30 in the administrative conference room.
So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Nicole,
I
call the
I
roll.
would just like to say, Chairman, that I think this shows not only to the public that we serve, but to us that we are willing to go to all lengths to make sure that we meet their requirements and our validations.
Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. The motion is to refer this item to the Strategic Committee to meet on June 1st at 4:30 PM. here in the municipal building for a discussion on the zoning assignment. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockmiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays?
Abstain.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner Oshinbaum?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey? Vice Chairman Whitfield?
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes.
That motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, Peyton, we have a question about Lone Oak Road and another voluntary annexation. Are you presenting?
Yes, sir.
That's, I learned a long time ago. The city commission deals with the motion. I mean, we can deal with it, but that's not really what we're charged with. If we, because then it becomes.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. In front of you, I have another Plan of Services and Zoning Assignment Review associated with the voluntary annexation of approximately 7.2 acres along Lone Oak Road. Now, again, I know we just covered this kind of a lot, but we are right here. So I think it was you, Commissioner Pavlich, who mentioned that these go to City Commission first. So this has gone to City Commission. It's passed its request to proceed. And now you all tonight are recommending on the Plan of Services and the zoning assignment, as we just found out. And then it'll go through the rest of the process with City Commission. And again, if there's anyone here to speak to this in City Commission, you will have tonight, and City Commission's public hearing will be July 7th.
See where it says public hearing?
Now, the request is for this territory right here, and they're seeking a zoning assignment of R4. And this is Cherokee Elementary, just for reference point. It's just north of Cherokee Elementary. There is no concept plan required for annexations, again, and zoning assignments. However, there are plans to do townhomes. But again, this is non-binding. That's just what the applicant has expressed. It's currently zoned A1 in the county. It is adjacent to City R4, so it would be a continuation of this R4 zoning. And then across the street on Lone Oak Road is R2, and then Cherokee Elementary is technically zoned R2 as well. And the future land use map does propose residential for this site. Again, the plan of services of note, I think, is the sewer extension cost of $70,000. And then sorry, I have to grab my sticky note. The estimated tax revenue for this property would be between $70,000 and $75,000 a year. And the plan of services has been reviewed by all applicable agencies.
If you would clarify that estimated property taxes, if it was developed with 100 multifamily units.
As Mr. Mitchell stated, the assumption for that is that the property would develop with 100 multifamily residential units.
100.
Staff recommends approval. Again, this is a vicinity map. Cherokee Elementary School, existing townhomes. This is the site in question. Staff recommends approval of the plan of services and zoning assignment of R4 to the City Commission.
Thank you, Peyton. Questions for staff?
Is that what density would be there in an R4? 100 multifamily units?
Correct, yes, sir.
Thank you.
What density is that per acre about? 14? Okay. Any other questions?
School board saw that?
Yes, sir.
I don't think y'all need me to get on my soapbox to you. Y'all know what I'm gonna talk about.
There's some new commissioners here.
Yeah, so I'm done. All right.
All right, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Anyone here to speak to the question? Seeing none, I'll close the floor. All right, discussion amongst the commission. Any other questions for staff?
Well, I think as opposed to the last one, this one's pretty, it's a little bit easier to consider. So I think
Sounds like a motion's coming.
Sounds like a motion's coming.
I'll make a motion that we approve the plan of services
I second.
and the recommended zoning.
Zoning for R4.
Yes, to R4,
I'll
yes.
second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? Nicole, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockmiller? Commissioner Mays?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy? Commissioner Oshenbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Whitfield?
Yes.
And Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes.
Motion approved.
It's very
Thank you
simple.
very much.
Everything goes
That
about
was
5
nice and
years
clean.
ago.
Nice, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Through public.
felt refreshing.
That's how you do it.
Whitney, do you have our question about text amendment,
At the city commission level.
our
I
text
do.
amendment issue?
Well, that's because no one knows about it yet.
I thought there was a
And
different,
there's
like,
only gonna be
did you have a question about text?
7 lots per acre. Yeah.
So there is a text amendment before you tonight. And basically, staff in the last, let's say, month or so has been receiving some requests about how buildings function. So essentially functioning within the, oftentimes it's two public type streets. So there is either a public street and a private drive that acts like a public street, or two public streets. And there are some stipulations in our zoning code that don't allow certain things in the front of a building. And that's what we are looking to address. In your packet, I put together like a kind of something that could happen. But what truly needs to happen is that if this is an issue that we should move forward with, that it does need to go to committee, and we kind of hash this out a little more, to have a little more time to prepare more of it, to basically prepare any unintended consequences that may happen with it. Because what tends to happen, and I did not prepare a presentation today for this, but what tends to happen is you have a building that, say, fronts, let's use the, let me think of a really good one. You have a building that fronts, let's say, State of Franklin. And on the corner, it's got a minor street. So it's like a street that maybe runs into a neighborhood or something like that. There are certain accessory structures that would not be, because it's street frontage, would not be allowed to go there. So this would allow for a little more flexibility. It's really the crux of it. Guitar Center, oh, okay. Guitar Center on People's Street would be an example.
You need a motion to move this to subcommittee, or just?
Yes. I do.
I'd like to make a motion to move this to subcommittee.
To which subcommittee?
Yours?
Yeah. I recommended the land use and
Yeah,
legislative.
I think it's like
committee.
land use and legislative, yes. Mine, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Someone's taking some ownership.
I want to open public comment for this, since we have a gentleman here to speak to the issue, before we entertain that motion, if you don't mind putting that on hold.
Sure.
I'll open the floor for public comment. Is anyone here to speak to the question?
I think that's me. I saw accessory structure. Sounded familiar. I'm Darrell Fowler with the Chick-fil-A at West Market Street. And we are asking for I don't know if my wording is correct, but a draft code adjustment for a canopy structure at our restaurant, 2103 West Market Street corner of State of Franklin, next door to the Walgreens. So our sister restaurant at People Street in 2019 got a whole new building, including the canopy structures that most of you have seen in my correspondence. I hope I was not obnoxious. I hope I came across as respectful in the couple of emails I sent to everyone, and I've had some very encouraging conversations with a number of you and people on the commission and in the city. But I also understand that there are limitations, and my conversation with Will Ryder back in October was kind of at a standstill because there's only so much that we can do. With that said, I guess what my question is to have this ordinance, I've heard different language like set aside or deferred or adjusted. I don't know what exactly how to word it, but my request is to have this
this structure approved to be built on, we have two structures, two canopies, one on the front by the West Market Street, and then one on the back that has been approved at the pickup point. In the bigger scheme of things, the real value of these canopies for us is on the side that has been disapproved or not approved, because that's where our staff are protected by these canopies. They provide shade and heat in the winter and fans in the summer, and they get a lot of great comments from the customers when our staff are out there in the hot or in the cold and are protected. So it is not just an innovation for speed of service and for sales growth and tax revenue. It's really about protecting our people, and it keeps us on a good footing with the precedent of what happened at West Market or at People Street, and so that is my request.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Seeing that I think no one else is here to speak to the question, I'll close the floor for public comment. Now we can return to our discussion.
So it's an accessory.
When I was at the county, in the county attorney's office, this came up repeatedly, more in a residential context for corner lots, where you have someone that lives in a corner lot and they're looking to put a pool in or something like that, and nothing qualifies as a rear yard because it's technically a side yard on both sides. And I don't know, I haven't obviously memorized the city planning code. Maybe I should have, but I'm not sure if even that's been, if that's been addressed, how to deal with that. I know at the county we kind of took the position we have to pick one that's a rear yard, and
That has been addressed, and we did that.
you did. Okay, we did do that. Okay, that was my only point. I think the point's well taken as to what you're asking, and I think it'd be a good thing to discuss how we could. Also, can we do can a variance be granted on this? Okay, no.
It does not meet that. That's what a lot of Mr. Fowler and I's conversations surrounded. One, the lot was subdivided and created after the current zoning code, so the lot was created this way, and it doesn't meet the legal requirements for a true hardship, which is why this is the more appropriate method to come and adjust it legislatively if you all decide to do so.
Okay.
So we would have to make an entire change to the rules that blanket everybody. Is that correct?
We could make an exception to an accessory structure and redefine accessory structure.
No,
I think we have more than one case of this situation.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I would redefine accessory structure.
Even if you made an exception, that's still a change to the zoning ordinance. So this is the, and we can discuss that in the land use committee, but all of those are, yeah.
I'd like to just take the word accessory structure and redefine it. That's what I would like to do, because we've already done this with the pool or the dock thing, so we'll do whatever y'all want to do.
So we've got a motion on the floor. Could you restate your motion, please?
Yep, so motion to move the text amendment on non-residential accessory structures to the land use subcommittee.
So
For
we
further
consider
discussion.
an accessory structure.
Okay, did I hear a second?
Second.
And a third. All right, discussion about the motion. We're going to take this to the land use and legislative subcommittee.
If you just
Yes.
have that, that's an accessory structure.
Call the roll, please, Nicole.
Okay. Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lockmiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy? Commissioner Oshinbain?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey? Vice Chairman Whitfield?
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right, is there any other business to come before us this evening? If not, I'll call the meeting adjourned.
Ready to make that ball game.